Today is World Environment Day, and on this occasion, Autocar and our partner Reliance General Insurance are bringing you a special discussion on electric vehicles or EVs. Now, we all know that EVs are overall good for the environment, but the question is, how viable are they? Has the time come for EVs, or is it still too early for you, the consumer, to see them as a realistic alternative for your mobility needs? How do they stack up from an overall cost of ownership point of view? Is charging infrastructure still an issue? And generally, the overall life cycle costs we are going to be looking at. And to talk about this and more, we've got a fantastic panel of experts who can share real world experience on the EV story. I would like to introduce our panel. We have Gaurav Gupta, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of MG Motor India. Now, MG Motor has sold around 1,500 ZS EVs, so they have a pretty large database of EV owners. On the two-wheeler side, we have Ravneet Phokela, who is the Chief Business Officer of Ather Energy, and their cutting-edge 450X scooter has just won the Autocar Green Two-Wheeler of the Year award. We have Vinkesh Gulati, the President of the FADA, who represents the dealer body, and again will give us more consumer insights. Charging infrastructure is critical. It's the fuel pump of EVs, and giving us an insight is Sandeep Bangia, the head of the EV business at Tata Power. And talking about keeping the buyer's investment secure with this new breed of vehicles, we have Raman Arora of Reliance General Insurance, who will give us his perspective as well. And I'd like to start off with Gaurav Gupta to give us some insights on the feedback he has got from his customers.
Morning, everyone, and I think the perfect occasion to have this conversation on the World Environment Day. So thank you, Hormazd. When we got into bringing in our second vehicle, the ZS EV, as a pure electric vehicle, it was a very similar debate that ultimately the ecosystem is not ready yet. And we are taking the so-called risk of bringing in our second product as a full electric vehicle. But then we were also observing that where is the world trend moving to? And then is the audience out there? Are the consumers there in India who really want to take this leap, take this jump for an environment-friendly car? And of course, it's not just purely an environment-friendly car, because you also have to look at from a consumer perspective, environment friendliness and your responsibility as a citizen and a person of the world is important, but also has to take place economic advantage of really having this ownership. These things become very important to you. And more than that, ultimately is a good product. So to share some numbers, this entire segment has actually doubled just last year in 2020, despite the pandemic. And I'm talking of cars which actually are customer four-wheeler passenger cars. It's a very small number. So, but don't look at the base, but look at the growth in terms of 100%. And this year, I think it'll double, more than double as well. So probably we'll have more than 10 to 15,000 passenger cars as EV cars coming onto the roads in India. Now, what does it mean? From our understanding, the consumers are coming up to the electric vehicles for a couple of reasons. People have really seen the advantages and the beauty of clear blue skies and clean air to breathe. That is, at the back of the mind, a big driver. Second is that consumers are really liking the fact that the economic advantage comes onto the picture also. There is a higher cost to get into the EV vehicles for sure, but there's a complete cost of ownership advantage, and we can talk about that during this conversation also, because the ownership is 1/6 compared to a typical IC engine. That is what consumers are liking. Third, just the pure thrill of having the car pick up and drive. So the initial thrill of good speed, good torque, and a completely silent driving, Hormazd, is very important, and they are liking it a lot. Fourth, especially again in pandemic time, the consumers are liking the fact that they have the flexibility and the convenience of charging their car at their own home. So they don't have to go to a gas station outside of what we are used to in a typical IC engine. It's like your mobile phones, wherein you typically will be charging your mobile at night at your home and then use it during the day.
Right. Well, thanks for those opening remarks, Gaurav. And again, sticking with the OEMs and looking at from the two-wheeler side, Ravneet, you've heard Gaurav. Is the kind of triggers somewhat similar, let's say for your scooters, or is it even a little bit of economics that's driving it?
Hormazd, some of our experiences similar to to MG and the car segment, but we have slightly different take on the entire piece, right? So I think today at this point in time, if I look at our customer base, and there is no reason to suggest that the customer base for Ather is dramatically different from what might exist in at least other two-wheelers. I can't say for sure for at least four-wheelers. Is these people are coming in because they fundamentally believe this is a better product, right? And not just because TCO is important, saving the world is important. So they come in because they understand that this is where the world is going, this is where the future is, and this fundamentally is a better product. And we spoke about the Gaurav mentioned about the pickup, acceleration, etc. The 450X is the fastest the fastest accelerating scooter you can buy in the country today, right? And that thrill is very exciting, and a bunch of other things that just make it a good product. Now I know it's a little awkward to say this on World Environment Day, but I'll just share my perspective on how consumers see it, right? For an average consumer, they want to buy a good product. In the process, if they can save the world, that's fantastic. Nobody wants to pay a penny to save the world if the product fundamentally is not good, right? And the question to ask is, if you're evaluating any electric product, if it wasn't electric, would you buy it? If the answer is no, that means it's never going to sell, because fundamentally you're expecting the consumer to lower the expectation of a product just because they want to go electric, and that's never going to work, right? And unless people understand that, it's going to be a very stunted growth, which also has a fairly profound impact on how you go to market, right? Education becomes a very important part. Giving test drives becomes very important for people to understand the true value of this, much beyond saving petrol and saving on saving the world, right? So I think that's been our so at this wave it's that.
Right. No, that's very interesting to have that perspective, that people are looking at your products more from a product point of view, and they perceive EVs as technologically superior, which I think is a general perception as well, because that is the future. And Vinkesh, you've heard both Gaurav and Ravneet from their point of view. I just you've got a more broader, more holistic, to let's say ear to the ground perspective. What are the triggers, and what are even, let's say, the impediments for let's say EV adoption?
So thanks so much for having me for this, and I'm happy to be sharing with such great visionaries of electric vehicle in the panel. See, practically, the process of buying a vehicle is a very complex, highly involved consumer decision. A vehicle normally is the most expensive purchase made by an individual or a household, just lower than buying a home. So normally what we have seen the trigger for an electric vehicle buyers are, it's a niche product. So there are some environmentalist people who look after that. So environmental friendly. One more concept which is coming down the customer line is it's future proof. So there are a lot of talks about EV as a future, and will ICE be there or not? Talk from the dealer side, I don't believe that we'll be able to shift from ICE to EV full. It will go parallelly in the market, but there are a lot of confusions in the customer. So which whosoever customers doesn't want to take a risk on ICE are also shifting towards EV, seeing it's future proof. And we should also consider that with the kind of fuel prices increasing, a mindset is also creating in customers that this is low running cost. Whatever be the electricity price, it will always be cheaper than running on fuel. And obviously, one thing what everybody is thinking, that it's low on maintenance. So there are no filters, there are no lot of things. So like people say, only 30% of the part line is being used. I feel it is more or less now. But one thing what is deterring today an EV buyer is the reach, I feel. So I remember one of the seniors in Mahindra used to say, "Jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai." And that is where I feel as a dealer that we are not on the right track. So uh, I forget about four-wheelers. The highest number is from the commercial vehicle segment. And if you see the availability of electric three-wheelers across India, across towns, and even small towns. So that is where the numbers are coming in if you talk of the ratio. Now, second, you come into two-wheelers. You find two-wheelers is the second best. Why? Because they are at least present in 5 or 10 big cities and with some good distribution system, maybe direct, maybe through dealers. But as you come towards passenger vehicle, you find there are only 2 or 3 manufacturers who are working on it. And with due apologies to Gaurav, still not giving the full importance, full focus as they give the focus to the ICE. So the point is, unless and until all the dealers are able to sell ICE and electric parallelly, we cannot say that there is an issue of adoption.
I think this leads nicely into Sandeep's territory. Basically, charging is one big concern, as you had raised also, Vinkesh. But I want to know how big a concern is it, because right now the sense one gets is that, to be honest, EVs are for people who are, to put it plainly, rich and who have access to a plug point. And for them, it's not a problem, especially in the cities. So, Sandeep, turning to you, the charging infrastructure. I mean, how much of an impediment is it? So, overall, let's be honest, the infrastructure is really behind the curve in this sense. And I think, is it holding up EV sales to a certain extent?
Uh, I'll just say this in a manner of speaking, and that brings to the classic chicken and eggs discussion. Uh, the charging infrastructure, and since I can see Raman also online, public charging infrastructure is largely to be thought about as a backup, as an insurance, let's say. That you are very, uh, you don't need it every day, but it's good to know that it is there just in case. So I think that's the way we see it all. And from a consumer perspective, uh, because most of the times you will end up charging at home or your workplace. Uh, this is the largest, and this is the global trend. But having said that, you need a comfort when you travel outside the cities, or when you forget charging at home, for that matter. You need a comfort that you have a charger not very far away from wherever you are going. Now, in this direction, I think there's a lot of work being done by people like us, and along with the car manufacturers. And we work very closely with Gaurav's team uh, to identify the locations which are the typical stops for his customers. And hence, we are able to triangulate where is the customers taking a stop, along highways, along malls, and the usual locations. We do have about 500 plus chargers as we talk, and there are other companies also. Now, those are the things, and we have identified hubs, city pairs, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Delhi, Chandigarh. So those hubs that we have identified, and working along with our OEM partners again, like MG, like Jaguar, like Tata Motors, to see the heat map of where those people travel, and we are able to get to the charging locations here.
But Sandeep, I just, before I turn to Raman, I just want to you talked about people charging their vehicles at home. But let's be honest, in a city like Mumbai, how many people, or even Delhi, how many people have access to home charging? I mean, cars are parked on the streets, in societies, that sort of thing.
So that's a very interesting point. Amongst, let us say, 4,000 plus home chargers that we have installed, I can count on my fingers the number of issues that we have faced. And those issues, mind you, are not because there is no designated location for the guy to charge. Because even if it is off-street parking, the guy has got a designated location. And he is able to make that decision. This is where my car is going to be, and this is when my charging is going to be. The problem, actually, Hormuz, you'll be surprised, is amongst this is something that Gaurav can bear me out. Even in high rises, even in established housing societies, RWAs, whenever you buy an electric car, the kind of questions that the societies or the RWA people ask, and that guy has got a designated parking. I've got an exclusive parking for myself. I'm going to install a charger in my parking. But the kind of obstacles that sometimes come in when it comes to the electric company, not Tata Power, but MSCB or any of those, uh, they ask too many questions. The society people ask too many questions.
So no, that's interesting, and it's very interesting that you raise a point that I don't know that the society sometimes are the biggest. I guess some people like to have that power in their hand, and they use that power rightly or wrongly. That, of course, is an issue. But I think I can imagine this happening. I want to turn to Raman Arora. Raman, you've heard all the panelists speak clearly. I mean, insurance is a key component of any product. Let's say from an EV standpoint, are there any services you all can offer? Because in the end, this is a big investment. and it's securing the investment is what is quite key. So
RSA plays an important role, but today RSA services, which any of the insurance company offers, are restricted to what? Towing of your vehicle to a nearest garage or a home, or a minor road repair, or emergency fuel assistance, or a battery jump start. And flat and battery account for 60-70% of the total service. But when it comes to electrical vehicle, though the range of issue encountered by a standard customer remains the same, however, the treatment will differ now. In case of electrical vehicle, if a customer is stranded, right? So you have to ping a RSA who will come and take your vehicle to a nearest authorized garage. What is needed as an infrastructure is, if you can take a portable charger to the place where the customer is stranded and charge it there, and without waiting time. When I say waiting time, it can't be in a minute, but yes, it has to be a reduced waiting time if a battery runs out. Here, the RSA plays an important role, and need is to create a lot of mobile vans. So if a customer is stuck going to Pune, Lonavala stuck, the mobile van goes to the customer, charges there. This could be one piece. Second, there could also be a reason where you need a electrical sports because of electrical vehicle. And today, the practical thing is the RSA vendor who goes is not a specialized guy. He's only meant to take your vehicle to the garage. What is needed as an R is that guy has to be specialized enough to handle some part of electrical work there and then, rather than taking the vehicle to the garage. So they need to bring this competency from the place of garage, from a lot of dealers, manufacturers, to the place where the customer is stranded. Hence, RSA plays an important role. So these set of services are the need of R to be included as part of RSA services. And we as an insurance company are in touch with this RSA to upgrade these all services to create that infrastructure so that anyone who owns a car can use this as the entire ecosystem seamlessly.
right.
This is my takeaway on RSA.
Thanks, Raman. And just sticking with the subject on, let's say, running out of range, RSA. I mean, Gaurav, turning to you. I mean, it's a it's a big range anxiety is a bit of a worry. Just what has been your experience with your customers? The feedback you've got, is range really an issue?
Let me just take one more step. Vinkesh talked about the overall drive towards EV. And I think I definitely will add to that point that if we have more vehicle options, more model options from more players, it all gives a flip. It adds to the entire EV segment, and that really helps. But at this point, Vinkesh specifically, why some of the states are not able to promote EVs is also a question, because only 13 states, 13 out of 13, maybe 15 at best, are the states which are offering some kind of little benefit of the registration charges for electric vehicles versus our entire country. On the range side, Hormazd, you talked about, I think it's very important to give a very clear perspective to the consumers, because there's always thing about what is a certified range and then what do you actually obtain in normal conditions. And I think we all have to try and look at taking the step of authenticity and really telling the consumer the hard facts. So for example, at least in the case of ZS, while the official certified range is 419 kilometers, we always also mention that in most conditions, you should be able to get a 300 plus range. So that really gives the consumer a perspective in his mind, and we have tested all of this also. So consumers understand that that is the kind of ballpark range he'll be getting in a normal conditions, like in most situations also, and these help. But again, a key factor is what would be a good range for an electric vehicle. So I would say anything more than 250 kilometers, 200 kilometers is good, because then you are able. Most consumers use 60 kilometers a day, on an average. In smaller towns, it's even lower, right? So if you look at that, if you double it also, you still have, 2 days of, you could say, the battery capacity to fulfill your requirements. In a case like ZS, is almost 3 to 4 days. So then you are kind of, sorted in terms of the range.
Thanks for the insights, Gaurav. And again, turning to Ravneet again on the issue of charging, which I think is the dynamic is very different for a two-wheeler. Obviously the running is less, the range is less, the batteries are smaller. It's easier to wiggle your two-wheeler into a charging location. And even the fact that the batteries are smaller, the case for swappable batteries is also something that could be considered. So what do you feel, is, let's say, can sort of assuage the customers, let's say, perception on this issue?
Yeah, I think the charging issue, I like to believe, I think we overestimate the the impact it has as a deterrent on adoption, right?
Right.
Obviously, it varies by vehicle class. It's different for cars and different for two-wheelers, etc. And in a lot of stuff that that Sandeep mentioned, Gaurav mentioned, is very similar actually to scooters as well. Now, scooters are smaller batteries because they run less fundamentally, right? So against about an average of 60 that he mentioned, that cars do already.
They weigh less also, so I think that has an impact on the
Yeah,
size.
so an average scooter does about anything between 20-25 kilometers a day. Any legit scooter should give you a range of about anything about 80, 85, 90 onwards, right? Which means at any point in time, there is enough charge to last 3 to 4 days. Uh, so we have data for about 31 million kilometers that our customers have done, and I can share some information with you. So about 74% of all charging happens at home overnight, pretty much echoing what other people have said, right? 22% charging happens, in people's offices, which is similar to home charging, where you're utilizing dead time for charging. Only 4% charging happens in public locations. Bear in mind, we have about 45 chargers in Bangalore. We don't charge a penny for people to charge. It's absolutely free. We just want to drive adoption. Despite it being free, it's only 4%. And it's just fundamentally, it's a top up charging. You're running more than anticipated. You need a quick charge, 15, 20 minutes, and then off you go, right? So really the, lack of charging infra is not fundamentally a problem. More so in scooters, which are more intra-city. Cars dynamic is different, intercity is a different dynamic, but scooters is not really a problem.
Right. And what about the case for swappable batteries, Ravneet? I mean, there's a concept that you're running out of charge, you can just stop at a kiosk where you can just swap batteries and move. Do you think that's something that is feasible, or is it just too inconvenient and a little cumbersome?
See, we could spend just 1 hour only on that topic. I can guarantee you'll still be less.
Yeah.
But and see the swappable. If you don't dig deep, if you just scratch the surface, if you don't scratch the surface, it seems very obvious. Everybody has the same battery. You go take it out, put it there, and off you go. Like simple. Like what's the problem? But there are a lot of operational problems, a lot of regulatory problems, a lot of technical problems, and eventually it's not cheaper for the customer either, because you have more batteries than vehicles on the road, at least 1.4, 1.5 times more batteries on the road. Then you have to have all OEMs agree on interoperability for the charging concept, the swapping to work. The An important thing to understand, the battery is not just a container that stores energy. It has a very profound impact on the drive and the overall performance of the vehicle. So if you standardize, you're actually sort of pushing in some manner commoditization of vehicles, which really is a shitty idea, because then what do you differentiate on, right? And then other important factor is that we are nowhere near maturity of battery technology.
Right.
Let's say you have 1 million batteries in the country which are swappable, right? Every 18, 24 months, we see there's a change. Like we've been in business only 3 years. We are a young startup. We are on the third generation of our own battery, right? So if you lock yourself into a lot of infra, then you can't absorb new technology coming in. How do you have backward compatibility? So there's a whole lot of problems. I think the case of swappable is a limited one. The case of swappable is limited to, I think, public transport, e-rickshaws, autos, etc., where it's not about performance, it's about reliable sort of rugged products, and you don't care about anything beyond that. Maybe there's a case there, but for individual and consumer vehicles, we really don't see a case for swappables at all.
Right. Right. Very, very, very interesting. And as you said, that's a different topic of discussion. Maybe sometime we should look into that as well. Vinkesh, turning to you, because I think, starting where Gaurav looked at, is the promise of the range, from a consumer's point of view. I mean, we've seen it, ARAI ratings on fuel consumption are different. Obviously, what you get in real world is different. Is this become an issue with customers, where the range is something and what you get in real world is different?
Hormazd, you are right. And like Gaurav said, as ARAI norms, it's some 400 plus, and they normally commit 300 plus. But it's a very different situation on the ground. The customer expects what ARI norms are there, it should be there. And as all panelists have said, anxiety is the real barrier to buy an EV. And I feel it's more of fear than actual, because a normal vehicle, any normal vehicle, if it's not being driven out of city, does 50 to 100 kilometers, which even 3 years back a car was doing. And latest what Tata is doing or MG is doing, that's high. But still, the confidence on ice, like every corner there is a petrol pump and I'll not be stranded. So there was a survey sometime in by Castrol, I don't remember when, but they came up with a survey that a 400 kilometer of a single charge will be the best practical. So I'm not saying the ARI one, the practical one, 400 kilometer on a single charge would be the tipping point to achieve maximum mainstream EV adoption. But additional, what I remember one point was the charging time. So no doubt infrastructure is important, but the charging time is also so the fast charge should be 30 minutes to max 40, 50 minutes where they can do that. Okay, so whatever over the night is happening may happen, but whenever is needed, they can do a fast charge of 30 minutes and get something.
For sure. But, I think that I want to get into this as we wrap up. What will it take to go from niche to mainstream? But just before that, Sandeep, I think Vinkesh has raised some valid points. One, he talked about a 400-kilometer range. I'm not sure, to be honest, whether I would agree with that, because I think, you're carrying a lot of weight, you're carrying a lot of cost. And the way to compensate that is with the charging infrastructure. Now, I think he raised a very valid point. We need a fast charging infrastructure. From what I understand, in India, the max we're going to go to is 50 kilowatt hours. Do you think that's enough? Because as cars become bigger, more sophisticated, have larger batteries, okay, we have luxury cars which are 80, 90 kilowatt hour batteries. That's quite niche. Nexon, MG, 30 to 45 kilowatt hour in that range, which is okay. But do you think fast charging is really the key, and is it really, in fact, let's say even a cost hurdle that beyond a point it's very difficult to go, especially when you're going to fast DC charging and the much higher kind of let's say voltages and power requirements.
So while 50 kilowatt is able to pack off a Mercedes or a Jaguar I-Pace also in 1.5 hours, an MG vehicle in about an hour or so. But most vehicles don't come with the zero charge. It's about a 15 to 20 minute top up is what is mostly required, which is the mindset shift that an electric vehicle needs.
Right. Thanks for that perspective, Sandeep, and Raman. You've heard all the concerns that there are. Vinkesh also has kind of cited some concerns about range and things like that. But looking at it from let's say your perspective, an insurance point of view, whether let's say in terms of the overall cost of maintenance, fewer things going wrong with the cars. I mean, do you see, let's say, the overall cost, whether even safety point of view, that the EVs do have some benefit, or do you think there is still a bit of concern?
Sure. Hormazd, before that, let me answer, and I wanted to add something which my panelist was saying. Today, why I feel anxiety when I'm driving a petrol car, which is very less today, because it tells you how many kilometers you can drive. This is one. And if yellow lights come, it means I have to refill. And today you see a lot of petrol pumps available, and it's easy to search Google and see you can reach in X number of time or a kilometer. If this problem of anxiety gets over in terms of infrastructure, various touch points, like each petrol pump have their charging points, I think most of the anxiety would be over. This is my answer as a customer, I'm saying consumer. And coming back to your question, does EV have an impact in terms of cost? So let me answer in two parts. See, from a coverage point of view, when somebody takes an insurance, either it's a IC or an EV, from a coverage point of view, there's no difference, right? It's a fuel type for us, right? So it covers all flood, accident, damages, whatever happens to the car, it is being covered under the motor tariff act. When it comes to premium, it has three parts. So let me explain it. From a OD, which is own damage, there's no difference. Either it's a petrol, diesel, or an electrical vehicle from a consumer point of view. Having said that, on a long run, when we see number of vehicles driven and we see there's less in terms of because of speed, or it could be because of less impact on the external damages, it may have an impact, but not as of now. So own damage will remain same, either it's an electrical vehicle or a petrol or a diesel. But when it comes to add-on covers, then there's a difference. For example, in a petrol car, you have an engine, right? So you take an engine cover. A consumer will buy an engine cover for an X price. In case of electrical vehicle, you don't have an engine, so you don't have to buy that cover. Hence, your premium goes down to that extent. But having said that, for example, what one of the panelists was saying of having chargeable, portable chargeables, which you might still keep in a car, you might like to cover this as part of your electrical cover. as part of motor insurance. But yes, in terms of engine cover, you don't need that cover. But say example, somebody bought a motor cover for an electrical vehicle and some damage happens to a battery. I'm saying from the claims point of view. Then if he has bought a nil dep cover, which is a nil depreciation cover, and something happens to the battery, 100% of cost is covered. And if he doesn't buy, 50% of cost. So from a coverage point of view or from a premium point of view, there's no difference. But add-on, people will keep shifting their add-on based on the type of vehicle. From a third party, which ID specifies, right? There's a premium arbitrage to the extent of 10 to 15%. So the premium in case of electrical vehicle is 15% lower than a normal IC engine. So yes, there's a difference when it comes to premium.
The whole thing is, I think looking at our EV numbers, looking at our sales, where we are compared to the rest of the world, let's be honest, we are behind in the race. So very quickly from all the panelists, what I want to know is what will it take for EVs to go from niche to mainstream? I just want maybe 3 very quick points.
Firstly, we all have to understand that it has to get the right resonance. The surround sound of EV is very important, and that is starting to happen, but we need more stakeholders to step forward. And that means that I think the time has come now that all the stakeholders, whether it is the component manufacturers, whether it is the charging infrastructure players, whether it is the OEMs bringing in cars, let's go build up the scale now. It's not about if, it's about when, and therefore accelerate those plans and bring it to the ground. That is number one. Second, I would say is from an overall, there's a lot of progress and a lot of direction on the policy framework, but it'll be very helpful if there is more impetus there so that all the states can move to this one unified direction. And largely, I would say that I think it's not about a debate about ICE or EV. It's about, both will coexist because it will take a lot of time, to really have the threshold volumes and taking it further. So I think we should always be looking at coexisting for some time, of course.
But let me talk to you about what I really believe where I think the big upside is today, at least most certainly from a scooter perspective. And I would also argue from overall industry perspective. Vinkesh spoke about abysmal numbers that we sell on a monthly basis. I would stick my neck out and say that the demand is much more than what the numbers that we sell. Right? The numbers that we sell today doesn't reflect the reality of the demand of the market. Our big problem today, honestly, is supply. It's not demand. When I say supply, I don't mean supply chain. That's a different topic, which I'll just talk about. It's just credible options. Like if you have like 20 lakhs in your pocket, how many options do you have? Vis-a-vis, how many options do you have in petrol cars? 1:100 maybe, right? If you look every 1 lakh, you have 10 options. If you look at scooters, every 5,000 bucks, you have a different option. When you come to bikes, 0 option. So what will people buy? Even if I want to buy, like what option do I have, right? So this fundamentally, like the moment, 2-3 big strong players come in, and I think Gaurav spoke about people coming together. You need credible products. You need options. If you have 20 options for cars and 20 options for scooters and 10 options for bikes, suddenly, even today, let's say magically tomorrow morning you have your option, you'll see, volumes going up dramatically, right? There's a fundamental problem. Legit players need to come in, not fly-by-night players who import, assemble, rebadge, and sell. People who have a long-term view on the business. So fundamentally, I think legit players coming in, supply chain scaling up, and in the interim till that happens, central and state governments coming together and providing the band-aid that we need for at least 3 more years till sort of cost gets rationalized.
So much, I'll give you this view from the dealer side. Like I said before also, I feel one big issue is the production side, what Ravneet ji said. So like Tata still has 2 months waiting, but is not able to produce some. Second, obviously, like options are not there. I told you before also, if you talk of so many, there are about 20 car manufacturers and only 2 are actually serious about electric vehicles. Hyundai is what 100 or 200 vehicle in a year, and Mahindra is actually now slowly moving towards commercial vehicle. They're not even present in electric vehicle cars. So I feel options are needed. And if you really want to make EV a mainstream thing, as a dealer, I could say that you'll need to give us something. So it's the same way like we are being sent to war and we don't have ammunition to fight. So we need cars. So you have to first improve your production. I'm talking from the dealer front or to all the OEMs. You have to improve your production and at least give us models to compare.
So Sandeep, turning to you again, niche to mainstream, you have a big role to play. I mean, But the sense I get is it's not, charging infrastructure is not really the number one priority to do that. But it's still important. And then how do you see it panning out? I mean, just give us a roadmap of, let's say, 3 years from now. Where do you see us in terms of charging infrastructure? How soon will it take to become, I mean, it may take very long to become like, let's say, going to a fuel station and instead of getting liters, getting some volts?
Okay. Okay, that's a good one. So I think we have today 500 plus chargers in the country, this is spread about close to 100 cities. So the big cities have got a larger concentration, and there are some small cities which have got, let's say, along highways. So this is one. We plan to go to around close to around 3,000 in the current fiscal. That's something which is as a clear-cut plan. And over a period, it will also depend on the vehicle penetration. And I can assure that we will be ahead when it comes to the proportion of vehicles to chargers, as in when that number gets established in a way.
And lastly, Raman, you've heard all the panelists. Just your thoughts, going from niche to mainstream.
So other than what my panelists said on the buying range and infrastructure, one thing which is more critical is to what you spoke about the RSA. What is needed of an R is to upgrade the knowledge of an RSA. For example, if customer is stranded today, instead of picking a vehicle and taking to a nearest garage, can he take a portable charger and charge the vehicle there and then in minimum waiting time? This is what a knowledge enhancement has to be done. Second, if there's some damage or some electrical works to be done, so you need a specialist. So this specialist has to be either at the place of where the customer is there, and or this specialist needs to be created in the entire ecosystem so that you can service a customer when he needed the most. So I think it is a part of infrastructure which needs to be built up, and this entire ecosystem has to be integrated in such a way when a customer buys a car, उसको बस ये लगना चाहिए there's no worry at all. Now he can either, it's a range issue, there's no buying issue, there's no infrastructure issue, and he just goes and enjoys that car.
Just want to end on saying that it's been a really fascinating discussion, and I think the consumer has really benefited from this. I think a lot of concerns have been addressed, and I think what clearly is there is that there is a genuine demand for EVs. It's not really so much the concern, but more the supply side. And I think it's really great that companies like you all have pushed and be pioneered this segment. I'm sure more will join, and when they do, the EV space will grow. And once again, thanks very much for joining us on this panel. Appreciate all of you giving us your time on this weekend, but that's when Environment Day was, and look forward to many more interactions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.